in comparing those two men's lives, I think Raymond Chandler came from more impoverished means, and he actually became, he ended up living in La Jolla. He sort of like wrote with he was sort of the enemy of the 1%, sort of in his writing, and here he almost kind of became it. It's just so very interesting.
Right.
And unfortunately, Dashiell Hammett was, I guess, taken out by, the Marx, the Red Scare, and was blacklisted.
Right.
And do you ever think that we'll see anything like that in our time again?
It's so unimaginable that we'll go through another full-blown McCarthy era. But then everything might be leading up to it, because a lot of the things, without going political, but a lot of the things that are happening right now, I never would have thought we will ever see again in the US, just as in Germany or other parts of Europe that should really know better, especially Germany. There's no excuse with that history for any move to the right, and it's crazy. So I guess anything is possible, and to become politically more interested. I was completely disinterested in politics, I have to admit, before the Trump era, because it always felt everything is kind of going into a borderline reasonable direction, and the minutia of it all seemed very boring. Very, that definitely has changed, because it's a daily soap opera now that is actually thrilling to watch, but it's also it's also unimaginable that we are watching that. So I think you have a good point that it's totally possible that will happen again, and maybe not with exactly the same methods, maybe a little bit more subtle, so that you don't hit those buttons where we are now more aware of censorship and of blacklisting and all that kind of stuff. But we're also more aware of fascism, and there are still signs of that raising its head again. So I don't know, but let's keep an eye out, I would say.
Yeah, there's a quote, and forgive me, I don't know who it's from, but it says something like, beware of artists. They can move between groups, like they're the most dangerous. And I'm butchering the quote, but I found that very interesting, that artists would be scary for, I guess, just because of what they create and the effect on the masses.
Right.
And they just said how they can move between sort of classes and groups easily, and that is actually the most sort of terrifying. I don't know, I'm butchering it.
Yeah. It's interesting, because the first thought that I had when this political change happened, that now happened, was that I felt really bad for the arts, because in my mind, storytelling was always this tradition that bundles our values and our experiences and everything we have to pass on to the next generation in terms of what's right and what's decent and what's important. And we put that into a story, and then we pass it on. And that's been going on for centuries and centuries, with films for 100 years. And yet, what happened, which basically, politically, people are getting to power that are defying every value that we've been passing on in terms of decency, in terms of blah, blah, blah. So does that mean that storytelling is actually far less powerful than I always thought? Because if stories had millennia to instill some kind of basic level of compassion and decency and all that in us, which is what almost every story is talking about. Now it's talking about values of freedom and tolerance and all these things. There are very few stories that talk positively about fascism or about screwing over the weakest part of society and all that. So how is it possible that someone can come in, not just Trump, all over the world, which makes it even scarier, wipe all that away, the Disney movie we've been showing our children to kind of get them to be good people, and within a couple of months dismantle that whole thing? Like, what does that say about the power of story? I don't know what the answer to that is, but I have less faith in storytelling than I used to before this era, for sure. And I hope that'll change. And hopefully storytelling can contribute to some kind of age of reason being ushered back in.